Sophie Cunningham just got the news that every basketball player dreads, and honestly, what happened next will shock you even more. The Indiana Fever are facing their worst nightmare right now, and if you're a fan of Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, you need to hear what's really going on behind the scenes. But before we dive into this absolute chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're about to expose everything the mainstream media isn't telling you about this situation. So here's what went down. Sophie Cunningham suffered an MCL tear in her right knee during Sunday's game against the Connecticut Sun, and the way it happened was absolutely brutal. Picture this. Bria Hartley from the Sun was driving to the basket, and as she was falling down after making a pass, she rolled directly onto the outside of Sophie's knee. The sound alone had people in the arena gasping. Sophie immediately clutched her knee, tried to hobble on one leg, and then just collapsed on the baseline in agony. The medical staff rushed over, and you could see the fear in everyone's eyes because we all thought the same thing. This looked like an ACL tear. But here's where things get interesting. While everyone was panicking about a potential career-threatening ACL injury, the MRI results on Monday revealed something different. It was an MCL tear, which sounds bad, but trust me, this is actually the best case scenario in a really messed up situation. You see, when you tear your MCL without any other damage to the ACL, PCL, or LCL, you're looking at a recovery time of anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months depending on the grade of the tear. That means Sophie could potentially be back for training camp next season, maybe even doing basketball activities by Christmas if we're being optimistic. Now let me tell you something that nobody else is talking about. Sophie Cunningham has been absolutely balling out this season. She's averaging 8.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.2 assists per game while shooting an incredible 46.9% from the field. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. Since Caitlin Clark went down with her groin injury back in July, Sophie has stepped up in ways that have shocked even her biggest supporters. In recent games, she's been averaging over 12 points with a ridiculous 76% true shooting percentage and hitting 45% of her threes. She's not just filling in, she's been carrying this team on her back. The timing of this injury couldn't be worse for Indiana. They've already lost Sydney Colson for the season with an ACL tear. Aari McDonald is done for the year with a broken foot. And Caitlin Clark, well, she's been dealing with her 4th muscle injury of the season, and nobody knows when she's coming back. ESPN is suggesting maybe August 26th, but that's just speculation at this point. The Fever have been hit with more injuries than any team should have to deal with in a single season. What really gets me fired up is thinking about what could happen next with Sophie's contract situation. This is where things get really juicy, and I need you to pay attention because this could determine the entire future of the Indiana Fever. Sophie Cunningham is one of those rare players who will literally play for cheap just to be on a winning team. When she was with the Phoenix Mercury, she actually signed a contract where she made $50,000 less per year because it was team friendly. Can you imagine that? A starter in the WNBA taking less money to help her team win. That's the kind of player Sophie is. But here's my concern, and this should be every Fever fan's concern too. The Indiana front office has been making some questionable decisions lately. They signed Shea Petty to a 7-day hardship contract after Sophie went down, which is fine. But what happens when Sophie's contract is up? I genuinely worry that this front office might let her walk. They might decide she's causing too many headaches with her social media presence, where she's been incredibly vocal about supporting her teammates and calling out bad officiating. If the Fever let Sophie Cunningham leave, especially after everything she's done for this team, it would be one of the biggest mistakes in franchise history. Let's talk about that Connecticut Sun game for a second, because what happened after Sophie went down is absolutely legendary. The Fever were down by 21 points. 21 in WNBA history. Teams were 29 in 1,722 when trailing by 20 or more points. But Kelsey Mitchell said not today and went absolutely nuclear. She scored 34 of her 38 points in the second half, tying a career high and recording the most points any WNBA player has scored this season. The Fever came back to win 99-93 in overtime, completing the largest comeback in franchise history. Aaliyah Boston, who had 14 points and 13 rebounds for her 15th double-double of the year, said something after the game that really stuck with me. She said being resilient has been their story the entire season. Think about that. This team has been decimated by injuries. They're missing their superstar in Caitlin Clark. They just lost Sophie Cunningham, and they're still fighting. They're still competing. They're still winning games they have no business winning. But let's be real here. This season has been a complete disaster for what was supposed to be Indiana's championship run. Coming into 2025, everyone expected Caitlin Clark to be an MVP candidate. The Fever were supposed to be legitimate title contenders. Instead, Caitlin has played just 13 games all season. She's dealt with 4 different muscle injuries, a left quad strain that cost her 5 games early on, another quad issue, then a left groin problem, and now this current right groin injury that's kept her out since July 15th. What's really frustrating is how secretive the Fever have been about Caitlin's recovery timeline. Head coach Stephanie White keeps saying there's no timetable. Caitlin is doing some running, she's making progress, but there's no clear return date. Meanwhile, Caitlin herself opened up on Sue Bird's podcast about how challenging this has been for her. She said she's never been through anything like this, never dealt with injuries before, and the stop and go nature of these muscle injuries is driving her crazy. She doesn't know how she's gonna feel from one day to the next, and that uncertainty is killing her. You wanna know what's really messed up? The Fever have actually been playing decent basketball without Caitlin. They went 10-9 in the games she's missed, including a 5-game winning streak at one point. Their defense has improved dramatically. They're the most improved defensive team in the entire WNBA compared to last season. But here's the thing, they're still a much better team with Caitlin on the court, and everyone knows it. Her 16.5 points and 8.8 assists per game are irreplaceable. Sophie Cunningham posted something on social media after her injury that really shows you what kind of person she is. Instead of feeling sorry for herself, she posted Kelsey freaking Mitchell to celebrate her teammates' incredible performance. Then after the injury news became official, she thanked everyone for the birthday wishes and prayers. Yeah, that's right. She suffered this season-ending injury the day after her birthday. Talk about terrible timing. And Caitlin Clark immediately showed her support too. She posted on Instagram stories saying, "Love you always, Soph," when the news broke about the MCL tear. These two have developed such an incredible bond this season, and it's beautiful to see how they support each other through all this adversity. Now here's something that should make every Fever fan nervous about the future. With the expansion draft coming up, teams need to decide who to protect. Normally, you wouldn't worry about Sophie Cunningham getting taken because she's not a max player or anything like that. But what if the Fever decide not to protect her? What if they think she's replaceable? I'm telling you right now, if Sophie Cunningham is not wearing a Fever jersey next season, this franchise will have made a massive mistake. The medical side of this is actually pretty fascinating. Sports injury expert Dr. Brian Sutterer analyzed the play where Sophie got hurt, and he initially thought it could have been an ACL tear or a patella injury. The way Bria Hartley's body rolled onto the outside of Sophie's knee created what's called a valgus stress, which typically affects the MCL. The good news is that MCL tears, especially isolated ones without other ligament damage, have much better recovery outcomes than ACL tears. The MCL has better blood supply than the ACL, which means it can actually heal on its own in many cases without surgery. If it's a grade 1 MCL sprain, Sophie could be back in just a few weeks, but since they're calling it a tear, we're probably looking at a grade 2 or grade 3 injury. Grade 2 could have her back in 6 to 8 weeks, while grade 3 might take up to 12 weeks. But even in the worst case scenario, she should be fully recovered and ready for next season's training camp. What really frustrates me is how this organization has handled the injury crisis. They waited way too long to sign replacement players. They've been playing without a true point guard at times. They've had to rely on hardship contracts and emergency signings. This is not how a professional organization should operate, especially one with championship aspirations. The Fever are currently sitting at 13-12, which puts them in a precarious position for the playoffs. They're only 2.5 games clear of the playoff bubble, and their remaining schedule isn't getting any easier. They've got games against Minnesota, Seattle, and other tough opponents coming up. Without Sophie Cunningham's shooting and defensive intensity, and with Caitlin Clark's return still uncertain, this team could easily fall out of playoff contention. But you know what? Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing. Some people are saying the Fever should just tank the rest of the season, get a better draft pick, let everyone heal properly, and come back strong next year. The problem is this team doesn't know how to quit. Even with all these injuries, they're still fighting, still competing, still trying to win every game. It's admirable, but it might not be the smartest long-term strategy. Let me tell you what needs to happen for the Fever to salvage something from this disaster of a season. First, they need to be extremely careful with Caitlin Clark's return. Don't rush her back just to make the playoffs. Her long-term health is way more important than a first-round playoff exit. Second, they need to lock up Sophie Cunningham to a multi-year deal as soon as possible. She's proven her value this season, and losing her would be catastrophic for team chemistry. Third, they need to seriously evaluate their medical and training staff because 4 muscle injuries for Caitlin Clark in one season is unacceptable. The silver lining in all of this is that Sophie's injury isn't career-threatening. She'll be back, and when she returns, she'll probably be even hungrier to prove herself. Players who suffer MCL tears often come back just as strong, if not stronger, than before. The rehab process for MCL injuries has improved dramatically over the years, and with modern sports medicine, there's no reason Sophie can't return to her previous level of play. What's really interesting is how the team has rallied around each other during this crisis. You've seen players like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston step up in huge ways. Natasha Howard has been a steady veteran presence. Even the role players have been contributing more than expected. This adversity might actually make them stronger as a team in the long run, but let's not sugarcoat this. The 2025 season has been an absolute nightmare for the Indiana Fever. They came in with championship dreams and instead got a season-long injury crisis. Sophie Cunningham's MCL tear is just the latest chapter in this horror story. The question now is whether this organization can learn from this disaster and come back stronger next season. If I'm the Fever front office, I'm already planning for 2026. Get everyone healthy, make some smart roster moves, maybe bring in some depth pieces who can handle the load when injuries inevitably happen. Most importantly, keep the core together. Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, that's your foundation. Build around them, protect them, and for the love of basketball, keep them healthy. The reality is that Sophie Cunningham has been everything the Fever could have asked for and more this season. She came over in that 4-team trade, immediately bought into the culture, became a fan favorite, and produced at a high level whenever called upon. She's been the ultimate teammate, the perfect role player, and honestly, she deserves so much better than having her season end like this. So what's the bottom line here? Sophie Cunningham will miss the rest of the season with an MCL tear, but she should make a full recovery. The Fever need to do everything in their power to keep her on this team long term. Caitlin Clark needs to take her time coming back from her groin injury. There's no point risking further damage for a lost season, and this organization needs to take a long, hard look at how they've handled this injury crisis because it's been nothing short of a disaster. This team still has a bright future if they can get healthy and stay healthy, but right now they're just trying to survive, and honestly, that might be the most impressive thing about this Indiana Fever team. No matter how bad things get, they just keep fighting. Before you go, make sure you hit that like button if you're rooting for Sophie's recovery, and subscribe for all the latest updates on the Fever's wild season. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on whether the Fever should shut down Caitlin for the rest of the season or bring her back for a playoff push. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next with this team because somehow, some way, they always find a way to surprise us.